The two things I regret most in ministry. I was not too wise a number of times with prophecy.
I have sinned against you, my Lord. And I would ask that your precious blood.
From a bishop who publicly prayed for a toddler's resurrection while quietly building a $96 million campus, to a network accused of siphoning over $100 million into private jets, mansions, and even a doghouse, and a self-proclaimed prophet who fled the country the moment police came looking for him. These are not rumors or internet gossip. These are documented court cases, federal indictments, sworn testimony, and confessions caught live on camera. Here are the 20 most corrupted churches in the world, ranked from bad to absolutely unforgivable. Stay until the very end, because number 1 will leave you speechless. Number 20, Eagle Mountain International Church. We begin in Texas, where Kenneth Copeland turned Sunday sermons into a runway for his own private Air Force. His ministry owns a fleet of jets, including a Gulfstream 5, all parked on a private airstrip right next door to his own lakeside mansion. I mean, this is a man who once said, flying commercials means flying in a tube full of demons.
And all that, you can't manage that today.
Right.
This dope-filled world.
Right.
You get in a long tube with a bunch of demons.
For 4 straight years, starting in 2007, United States Senator Chuck Grassley led a federal investigation into how Copeland's tax-exempt ministry funded a lifestyle worth an estimated $300 million. Copeland refused to fully cooperate with investigators in the name of religious freedom, and the investigation eventually stalled without any real accounting of where the money truly went. He continues preaching to this day that flying coach is beneath a man of his spiritual anointing, while congregants tithe their rent money, believing it would multiply back tenfold. But private jets are nothing compared to the secret our next church spent decades trying to bury. Number 19, Gateway Church. From one of the largest churches in America came crashing down over a secret that had been buried since the 1980s. Founding pastor Robert Morris resigned in June of 2024, just 2 days after Cindy Clemashear came forward, saying he began sexually abusing her when she was only 12 years old, an abuse that lasted 4 long years. An internal investigation later revealed that church elders had known for years and stayed silent. Morris was indicted in Oklahoma and pleaded guilty in October of 2025 to 5 felony counts of lewd and indecent acts with a child. He received a 10-year sentence, but served only 6 months behind bars before walking free in the spring of 2026, now a registered sex offender for life. The betrayal here was never just personal, it was institutional, and our next entry proves that same institutional silence can last for decades before it finally implodes. Number 18, Heritage Village Church.
If every person watching could double their pledge right now, that way we can save the Word of God.
Better known as the PTL Club, this was the sprawling empire built by Jim and Tammy Faye Backer throughout the 1980s, complete with its own Christian theme park and resort called Heritage USA. Behind the tiers and the television cameras, Backer was selling lifetime memberships to the resort many times over the number of rooms actually available, pocketing the surplus for himself. He was also quietly paying hush money to a young church secretary named Jessica Hahn to bury a sexual encounter and keep it out of the press. When the fraud finally surfaced, Backer was convicted in 1989 and originally sentenced to a shocking 45 years in prison, later reduced on appeal to 8 years, of which he ultimately served roughly 5. It remains one of the most spectacular and most televised collapses in the history of televangelism. But across the ocean, one church would soon prove that exploitation does not need decades to be uncovered. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 99% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Number 17, the NextGen family.
Either you think it's true or false, there was no sacrifice until there was revelation.
Formerly known as SPAC Nation, this London-based church built its brand on flashy suits, celebrity endorsements, and rescuing young people from crime. But a BBC Panorama investigation revealed a darker engine underneath the surface. Vulnerable, low-income members were pressured to give at least £1,000 a month, with some reportedly asked for as much as £20,000, while founder Toby Adegboyega lived in a £2.5 million mansion, complete with its own swimming pool. In June of 2022, the British government forcibly shut the charity down after it failed to account for £1.87 million in spending, and investigators later banned several senior trustees from ever running a charity again. Adegboyega eventually lost his years-long fight against deportation from the very country he had built his empire in. The gap between what members sacrificed and what their pastor enjoyed could not have been wider, though our next church somehow makes it look small by comparison. Number 16, the Jesus Nation Church. Known internationally as the Enlightened Christian Gathering, this church was led by self-proclaimed prophet Shepherd Bushiri, a man who branded himself a billionaire businessman blessed with supernatural financial powers. He convinced middle-class and elderly followers to pour their life savings into his private gold and diamond investment schemes, promising unbelievable returns on every dollar given. Well, it turned out the entire operation was exposed as a fraudulent pyramid scheme worth well over $100 million. When South African authorities finally moved to formally arrest Bushiri and his wife on charges of fraud, theft, and money laundering, the couple skipped bail entirely in the middle of the night and fled the country to neighboring Malawi, where they remain free to this day, despite ongoing extradition requests. Thousands of families were left financially ruined and utterly humiliated, while Bushiri kept right on streaming his sermons online, demanding his followers send even more money to sustain what he called his ministry. A pastor fleeing the country is really audacious, but our next entry proves a pastor can run his evil scheme in plain sight for years. Number 15, New Life Church. This Colorado megachurch was once led by Pastor Ted Haggard, a man so influential he also served as president of the National Association of Evangelicals and regularly advised the White House on matters of faith and policy. His public image as a defender of traditional family values collapsed almost overnight in November of 2006, when a male escort named Mike Jones came forward alleging a years-long sexual relationship, along with methamphetamine use. Haggard initially denied everything, calling the accusations lies, before eventually admitting to what he vaguely described as sexual immorality. He resigned from both positions within days, leaving thousands of stunned members to explain how their leader's private life had contradicted everything he preached from the pulpit. The man who campaigned against a lifestyle to millions of Americans had secretly been living a completely different one, and he would not be the last celebrity preacher whose healing hands hid something far less miraculous. Number 14, World Healing Center Church. This is the ministry behind Benny Hinn, the faith healer whose stadium crusades promised miraculous cures to the sick and dying, all captured live on camera for maximum effect. Hinn's personal fortune has been estimated around $60 million, with his ministry pulling in roughly $100 million annually, largely from desperate viewers hoping their donation might finally be the one that unlocks their healing. In April of 2021, his organization was sued for over $3 million in unpaid production bills it simply refused to pay. His own nephew, Kosti Hinn, eventually walked away from the family business and published a memoir detailing years of manufactured miracles and extravagant private spending that funded a lifestyle most of Hinn's own donors could never dream of. Even Benny Hinn himself admitted that some of his prophecies and doctrines over the years have been completely false.
We all make mistakes. The two things I regret most in ministry: I was not too wise a number of times with prophecy.
Faith was the product being sold, and Hinn was the one quietly collecting the profit, though he is far from the only bishop on this list hiding a fortune behind a robe. Number 13, Peter Popoff Ministries. This faith-healing ministry used to call out sick strangers by name like it was a message straight from heaven. In the 1980s, the organization's leader would announce audience members' illnesses and home addresses as if receiving divine revelation. In 1986, magician James Randi exposed the entire operation live on television, revealing the ministry was secretly feeding its founder information through a hidden earpiece, relayed by his wife backstage using cards congregants filled out before the show.
Peter Popoff, still alive and well and doing the same thing, made $1 million more than the year when we exposed him on that show.
That scandal alone bankrupted the ministry within a year, but the organization staged an unbelievable comeback, selling Miracle Spring Water for $27 a packet. And today, it still generates an estimated $10 million in accumulated wealth for its founder. But fake healings are nothing compared to what's coming next. This ministry will make your skin crawl. Number 12, Tony Alamo Christian Ministries. Few names in this entire countdown carry as much horror as Tony Alamo. Behind the compound walls of his ministry, followers were reportedly subjected to forced labor, physical punishment, and total isolation from friends and family in the outside world. In 2009, Alamo was convicted on federal charges of transporting minors across state lines for sex, a crime that shattered any remaining illusion that his ministry was ever about faith at all. He was sentenced to a staggering 175 years in federal prison. Alamo never expressed a shred of remorse, continuing to insist on his own innocence from behind bars all the way until his death in 2017. His victims, some of whom say they were groomed from early childhood inside the compound walls, are still rebuilding their lives today, decades after the abuse first began. It is a chilling reminder that not every scandal on this list is about money, and the next church shows just how easily a pastor can walk away from disgrace and simply start over. Number 11, Family Worship Center. This is the ministry of Jimmy Swaggart, once one of the most powerful and highest-earning televangelists in the entire country, until he was caught with a prostitute outside a motel in 1988. His tearful, trembling confession of "I have sinned" in front of his own congregation became one of the most replayed and mocked moments in televangelism history.
I have sinned against you, my Lord. And I would ask that your precious blood.
But the story did not end there. Just 3 years later, in 1991, Swaggart was caught again in nearly identical circumstances, this time offering no apology at all, telling his stunned congregation that it was simply between him and God. Rather than stepping down permanently, he rebuilt his platform and kept right on preaching, proving that in the world of prosperity ministry, scandal rarely means the end of a career. However, this next church proves that some churches can survive not one scandal, but 2 entirely different pastors' worth. Number 10, New Birth Missionary Baptist Church. This Atlanta megachurch has cycled through scandal after scandal, almost as if corruption were simply part of the job description. Under Bishop Eddie Long, multiple young men filed lawsuits in 2010, alleging he used luxury gifts, cash, and his own spiritual authority to coerce them into secret relationships, a case that ended in a quiet, undisclosed out-of-court settlement, while a separate Senate investigation dug into how his charity's funds were being spent. Long died in 2017, and his successor, Jamal Bryant, brought fresh controversy of his own, publicly fathering multiple children outside his marriage, while continuing to lecture his congregation on moral purity, and later pushing a controversial plan to launch a church-backed cannabis dispensary. 2 very different pastors, 2 very different scandals, and yet it was the same working-class congregation left footing the bill for both men's contradictions. That brings us to a scandal so shocking, it toppled one of Christianity's most trusted intellectual voices. Number 9, Ravi Zacharias International Ministries. For decades, Ravi Zacharias was considered one of the most respected Christian apologists alive, admired by millions for his intellectual defense of the faith on stages all over the world. He died in 2020 as a hero to many, his legacy seemingly untouchable. Then, in 2021, an independent investigation revealed a horrifying secret. Zacharias had spent years sexually abusing massage therapists across multiple spas he personally owned. using his ministry's reputation as cover for the abuse. The board that once defended him was forced to admit the claims were credible, and the ministry he built collapsed entirely, forced to dissolve and rebrand under a different name just to survive the fallout. If a man that respected could hide something this dark, imagine what a theologian even more obsessed with public integrity might have been hiding all along. Number 8. One Passion Ministries. Founded by widely respected theologian Stephen Lawson, a man who spent decades teaching pastors around the world how to preach with conviction and integrity, this ministry unraveled almost overnight in September of 2024. Lawson was removed as pastor of Trinity Bible Church of Dallas after confessing to church elders what he vaguely called an inappropriate relationship. It was later revealed by a close colleague to have been a secret 5-year-long romantic entanglement with a woman in her 20s, decades younger than him. Within days, every major institution connected to his name, including the Master's Seminary, Grace Community Church, and Ligonier Ministries, scrubbed him from their websites entirely and cut all ties. 6 months of silence followed before Lawson finally admitted publicly that he had betrayed and deceived his own wife and family for years. Things only get more glamorous and far more damaging from here. Number 7. Hillsong Church. Once the most fashionable church on the planet, Hillsong's global empire began crumbling in March of 2022 when founder Brian Houston resigned after an internal investigation found he had behaved inappropriately toward 2 separate women. That same year, he stood trial in Australia, accused of concealing his own father's history of abusing a child decades earlier. Houston was ultimately acquitted in that specific case, but the damage to Hillsong's global reputation was already done. He later pleaded guilty to a separate drunk driving charge in the United States, one final embarrassment for a brand once synonymous with cool, celebrity-filled Christianity. The church that once filled stadiums with famous names was left explaining to its own members how the man at the top had hidden so much for so long. But even this was not the most theatrical downfall on our list. Number 6. Leaders of Tomorrow International Ministries.
I'm about to get controversial right now because I'm going to teach you the understanding of what God is saying. Watch this. I need you to understand this. I do not care about heaven.
This Brooklyn-based ministry belongs to Bishop Lamore Whitehead, a man who flaunted his wealth so aggressively that in July of 2022, masked gunmen robbed him at gunpoint during his own live-streamed sermon, stealing over $1 million in jewelry in front of his stunned congregation. The robbery made international headlines, but it also triggered an FBI investigation into how a local bishop had acquired that much wealth in the first place. Prosecutors soon discovered Whitehead had stolen a $90,000 retirement fund from a vulnerable elderly woman in his own congregation, promising to buy her a home and spending it on himself instead. In 2024, a federal judge sentenced him to 9 years in prison, trading his diamond chains for a set of steel handcuffs. Sometimes the real crime is not what gets stolen from a pastor, but what a pastor steals first. And our next entry proves fame can shatter a reputation just as fast as a robbery. Number 5. Hillsong Church, New York City. The Manhattan branch of Hillsong became its own scandal entirely under Pastor Carl Lentz, the celebrity favorite fired in November of 2020 for what the church vaguely called moral failures, later confirmed to be adultery. The following year, the family's former nanny published a public account alleging she endured bullying, abuse of power, and sexual abuse over 7 years working inside Lentz's home. A documentary series later exposed even more, including claims that top leadership knew about his behavior long before they finally acted. Then, he eventually confessed.
Well, that wasn't the primary thing that got me in trouble. It wasn't a sexual thing. It's not like I was out, looking to have sex or looking to commit adultery. I had deep brokenness that manifests itself in a lot of different ways.
The glamorous, celebrity-filled congregation that once defined cool Christianity turned out to be hiding one of the ugliest workplace stories in modern ministry. It would not be the last time a viral personality's public image collapsed the moment the cameras stopped rolling. Number 4. Lifestyle Christianity. Evangelist Todd White built an entire following on viral street healing videos, most famously, a leg-lengthening trick that has been repeatedly debunked by pastors and scholars as pure theater performed on unsuspecting strangers. Behind the miracles, White reportedly earned a salary exceeding $500,000 a year, and former staff members allege he asked ministry supporters to make checks payable to him personally rather than to the church itself. In early 2026, following months of mounting pressure and an independent investigation announcement, White released a public apology video addressing allegations of financial opacity and a controlling leadership environment. For a man who claims to heal every stranger he meets on the street, he has struggled to heal the trust of the very people who worked closest to him for years. Our next entry involves a healing of a very different kind, one the entire world was watching in real time. Number 3. Bethel Church. In December of 2019, this Redding, California megachurch made global headlines for an entirely different reason. When 2-year-old Olive Heiligenthal, daughter of a beloved Bethel worship leader, died unexpectedly, the church organized public prayer gatherings asking God to resurrect her, while a fundraising campaign simultaneously solicited $100,000 in donations. Well, the resurrection never came. Critics say the spectacle exploited a grieving family's pain for viral attention, all while the church poured resources into a $96 million campus expansion of its own. Bethel remains tied to the New Apostolic Reformation movement, long criticized for blending prosperity theology with practices its own former members have struggled to defend. But the network, sitting at number 2, makes even Bethel's campus budget look like child's play. Number 2, Trinity Broadcasting Network.
Border to border and around the world, it is time to...
Founded by Paul and Jan Crouch, this network once declared a net worth exceeding $800 million, built almost entirely on donations from viewers praying for their own financial breakthrough. In 2012, the Crouch's own granddaughter, Brittany Coper, filed a lawsuit alleging the family had siphoned over $100 million for personal use, including a $50 million jet, 13 mansions across 3 states, and a $100,000 mobile home built specifically to house Jan Crouch's dogs. The scandal deepened further when another relative, Kara Crouch, was awarded $2 million after a jury found her own grandmother covered up her sexual assault by a network employee when she was just 13 years old. A media empire built on faith turned out to be one giant family feud over a stolen fortune. And that brings us to the single most disturbing entry on this entire countdown. Number 1, the most disturbing entry on this entire list, Jesus Dominion International. Based in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, this church was led by Nigerian televangelist Timothy Omotoso, arrested in 2017 and charged with 32 counts of rape, human trafficking, and racketeering. Star witness Cheryl Zondi delivered harrowing testimony describing years of abuse that began when she was a teenager, recruited into his inner circle. Throughout the trial, loyal congregants gathered outside the courthouse, chanting prayers for their accused pastor rather than offering support for his alleged victims. After spending 8 long years in custody awaiting trial, Omotoso was ultimately acquitted on all 32 charges in April of 2025, when the court ruled that prosecutors had failed to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. A trial that lasted nearly a decade, involving dozens of witnesses and years of harrowing testimony, ended without a single conviction, leaving his accusers with nothing but the memory of a courtroom full of loyal followers who chose to defend their pastor instead of believing the women who came forward. And that's the 20 most corrupted churches in the world, from stolen retirement funds, secret double lives, and forced labor compounds to federal prison sentences, multi-million-dollar cover-ups, and trials that stretched on for the better part of a decade. These cases prove that a pulpit can shield almost anything if enough people are willing to look away and keep giving. Behind every single one of these stories is a congregation that trusted, sacrificed, and believed with their whole hearts, only to discover the empire they had spent years funding was never actually built for them at all. It was built for the man standing behind the microphone. Which name did we leave out? Let's hear your thoughts in the comment section.